There are times when you're using an engineered joist, in this case a metal web joist, where in refurb situations like what we're doing here, is we need to forward order, we need to know what we need way in advance, and sometimes where we've got new build we can actually give exact measurements, and other times, especially in the case of the wonky wall on this build, we needed to have ends that were trimmable. Okay, in this case I only needed one trimmable end because I've got a new extension on that end and I've got a fixed wall position a bit further down, so I needed to be able to take something off the ends. This is where all of the strength is at this point. Now to do that I'm going to cut through it, but they do put a series of fixings into the solid blocking on the end, and they're not spaced evenly, they're just nailed in by nail gun, and in this case I've got a few that are hitting, so I'll have to use a metal blade on a multi-tool. But generally speaking, this is how I cut where there are no nails. I use the circular saw, but I cut from both sides. I square it all the way around and I cut from both sides, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean now. So the best way is to mark them through with a square first. So mark it all the way through. Mark from one side because your square might show up a different. We'll mark them right through. And we're going to lay that flat carefully. That's why Andy's helping me at the other end. We don't want to make these go all a bit floppy. So what I'm going to do is obviously use the square to run the saw against. So I'm going to use the square to run the saw against. That keeps it nice and true. Then I'll flip it over and do the same from the other side. Now this saw almost gets this depth, but I'm going to cut from both sides. I always find it's a better job, you get a nice flat square end. And where there's a nail, for example, if the nail's in my way, I'll reduce the depth of the cut to cut either side of the nail. Then I'll cut through. Then I'll use, I've got a multi-tool here, which is the ideal thing then to follow the cuts through and finish them off around those nails. So let's just show you an example of that now. I'll just cut this one off. Just flip that over. They're a bit lumpy, these ones. 7 meters long. But you've got to be a bit gentle with them because you don't want them to flop and flex up and down. And the other thing about running against there, or the base even against there, is the fact that it's hard to mark that in there, and you'll be sort of, the perspective as you're looking at it, you might start skewing off. So just line everything up, that with that on the mark. And then I'm just going to finish that off. Now I can finish that with a hand saw or a multi-tool. I'll do a hand saw because there's no metal work in there. I'm not going to hit anything. Just got to take out the middle. And that gives us a really nice cut. And I just like that because I know that it's as good as the end that came out of the factory. You see, they're all really nice. When they produce these joists, like when they produce a lot of this engineered timber, there's not a lot of human error involved. They've got machines that will cut the timbers exactly to length, and they've got presses that hold everything absolutely perfect. So when you get the stuff out, okay, you get a bit of that, look, that isn't dead central, but the principle still works really nice. This doesn't help if you're cutting things in between like noggins and you want to try and get that profile. You've got to adjust it every time. But that is a lovely bit of work, isn't it? So that's how I trim them down. That's the way I like to do it. And when you get the big thick ones as well, look, we've got some here which are super wide, the top chord's super wide. So then I'd probably get out my larger circular saw and do the same principle from both sides. Sometimes you can cut across the top, cut across there and finish them by hand, but you have got the nails in the way in some cases. Now what do I do when the nails are in the way? Well, what I'll do is I'll cut where I can cut. I'll then use the multi-tool to get as far to the nails as possible, and then I'll just find my way out with the nails. So I hope that's helped you. If you've turned up on site, you're a carpenter and you've been presented with these, you need to check everything. You need to check the drawings. You need to ask if you've got trimmable ends, if it's not clear from the drawings, because on our drawing, for example, there isn't that level of detail about the trimmable ends. It's something that I specified, so I know that I've got the trimmable ends. Before you cut anything, because the idea of these is they come in and they are finished. They're the right length wherever possible. Some of them are what we call top chord supported as well, so they might sit over a steel at this point. You just need to make sure you've read up on them, and if in doubt, just ask. Just ask.